When people think of the British royal family, names like King Charles or Prince William usually come to mind. But there's one royal who quietly lives a life that might surprise you. Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, often stays out of the spotlight, yet his lifestyle is far from ordinary. In fact, it's a mix of tradition, privilege, and surprising independence. Born in 1964 as the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Edward grew up surrounded by royal expectations. But unlike his siblings, he didn't follow a typical royal path right away. Instead, he explored the world of theater and television production, even launching his own company. That alone sets him apart from most royals. Today, as the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward carries both historic responsibility and modern flexibility. He represents the crown at official events, supports dozens of charities, and still manages to maintain a relatively low-key public image. But don't mistake quiet for simple. Behind the scenes, his life includes grand residences, global travel, and access to a world most people will never see. So what is his daily life really like? How does he balance duty with personal freedom? And why do some say his lifestyle is one of the most underrated in the entire royal family? Let's take a closer look. One of the most fascinating parts of Prince Edward's life is where he lives. Unlike some royals who rotate between multiple high-profile residences, Edward and his wife, Sophie, primarily reside at Bagshot Park. This isn't just any home. It's a massive estate located in Surrey, surrounded by acres of private land and steeped in royal history. Bagshot Park has been a royal residence since the 19th century, but Edward's version of it blends tradition with modern comfort. The property reportedly includes dozens of rooms, beautifully maintained gardens, and enough space to offer complete privacy from the outside world. It's the kind of place where security is tight, but the atmosphere feels more like a private countryside retreat than a palace. What makes this even more interesting is how the couple uses the space. Unlike Buckingham Palace, which is heavily tied to official business, Bagshot Park feels more personal. It's where they raise their children, host close friends, and live a life that's surprisingly grounded for royalty. At the same time, Edward still has access to other royal residences when duty calls. From Windsor Castle to Buckingham Palace, he moves between worlds seamlessly. This dual lifestyle, private yet royal, is a big part of what makes his life so unique. But Prince Edward's life isn't just about where he lives. It's also about how he spends his time. As a working royal, he carries out hundreds of engagements each year. These range from formal ceremonies to visiting charities and meeting community groups across the UK and beyond. One of his biggest focuses is the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, a program started by his father. Edward has taken a leading role in expanding it globally, helping young people build skills and confidence. This isn't just symbolic. He actively participates, attends events, and works behind the scenes to keep the program growing. What stands out is how hands-on he is. While some royals are seen mainly at high-profile events, Edward often shows up in more low-key settings. Schools, local organizations, and youth programs regularly host him. That gives his work a more personal feel. Despite this packed schedule, he manages to avoid constant media attention. You won't see him trending every week. But that doesn't mean he's inactive. In fact, his quieter approach allows him to focus more on long-term impact rather than short-term headlines. This balance between visibility and privacy is rare, especially in a family that lives under constant scrutiny. Another surprising part of Prince Edward's life is his financial situation. While he benefits from royal funding and privileges, his path hasn't always been straightforward. In his earlier years, his attempt at building a television production company didn't go as planned, and it drew criticism at the time. Things have changed significantly. As a senior royal, his income now comes largely from the sovereign grant, which supports official duties. He also benefits from access to royal properties, security, and resources that drastically reduce personal expenses. But here's where it gets interesting. Compared to some other royals, Edward is often seen as more financially modest. He doesn't flaunt extreme luxury in public, and his lifestyle appears more controlled and structured. That said, modest in royal terms still means access to incredible privilege. Travel is often first class or via private arrangements. Events are hosted in historic venues, and daily life includes staff support that most people can only imagine. It's this mix of restraint and privilege that makes his financial lifestyle so fascinating. He lives comfortably, even lavishly by normal standards, but without the constant display of wealth that draws attention. Family life is another area where Prince Edward's lifestyle stands out. He and Sophie have built a reputation for being one of the most stable and grounded couples in the royal family. Together, they have 2 children, Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex. What's interesting is how they've chosen to raise their children. Despite their royal status, both children have been given a relatively normal upbringing. They attend school, pursue personal interests, and stay largely out of the intense spotlight that follows other royal heirs. Edward and Sophie have been deliberate about this approach. They've often emphasized the importance of privacy and allowing their children to grow up without overwhelming pressure. This decision has shaped their household into something that feels closer to a traditional family than a royal institution. At the same time, the family still participates in major royal events. From trooping the color to official ceremonies, they step into the public eye when needed. This balance allows them to stay connected to their roles while protecting their personal lives. It's a rare setup that blends royal duty with a sense of normalcy. So why do some people say Prince Edward's life is insane? It's not about constant drama or over-the-top luxury. Instead, it's the contrast that makes it so fascinating. On one hand, he lives in historic estates, travels the world, and represents one of the most famous institutions on the planet. On the other hand, he manages to stay relatively private, avoid major controversies, and maintain a steady family life. Few people have that combination. Most public figures either live fully in the spotlight or step away from it entirely. Edward somehow exists in both spaces at once. His life is a reminder that not all royal stories are loud or dramatic. Some are quiet, structured, and carefully balanced. But when you look closer, that balance itself is what makes from grand residences to global influence. Prince Edward's lifestyle is far more complex than it first appears. There's also something worth noting about how Prince Edward handles public perception. In a time where every move can be analyzed online within minutes, he keeps things steady and predictable. That consistency has helped him avoid many of the controversies that have affected other public figures. It's not accidental. It reflects a deliberate choice to stay focused on duty rather than attention. He also represents a quieter version of modern royalty. Not every royal needs to dominate headlines to be effective. In Edward's case, his influence shows up through long-term work, stable commitments, and a reputation for reliability. That might not always make viral news, but it builds something more lasting. And in many ways, that's what makes his lifestyle not just unusual, but surprisingly powerful.